Something serious is unfolding in the global chip war, and most people don't even realize it yet. While the United States pushes to block China from accessing advanced technology, China has discovered its own way to strike back. And the Netherlands is suddenly in deep trouble for helping Washington restrict China's chip production. Now that China is hitting back, Europe is facing a shortage of crucial chips used across multiple industries. And everyone is pointing fingers at the Dutch government for mishandling the situation. The crisis surrounding the Dutch company Nexperia has moved far beyond business. It has become a conflict that reveals how the United States is pressuring the Netherlands into a confrontation with China so Washington can limit how many chips China is able to make. And Beijing is proving it can disrupt entire industries by blocking components Western factories rely on. European automakers are already feeling the pain. U.S. officials are panicking behind the scenes, and for the first time, Washington is no longer the one setting the pace. This isn't just a story about semiconductors, it's about power. Who has it? Who is losing it? And who is quietly taking it piece by piece? What you're about to see shows how the chip war has entered a new phase, one where China is no longer simply reacting, but leading. And the West, despite sanctions and alliances, may already be losing control. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because what happens next in this chip war will determine who leads the global economy and who gets left behind. Let's get started. Global chip problem with Nexperia. In early October 2025, The Hague made what it thought was a firm and necessary move, ordering Chinese-owned Nexperia to sell off its semiconductor operations inside the Netherlands. Officials claimed it was about national security. They believed removing China's ownership would protect Europe's sensitive chip infrastructure from espionage or foreign influence. But they were wrong. Dangerously wrong. What Dutch regulators viewed as a protective decision, Beijing interpreted as a direct economic attack. And China was not about to stay quiet. Within days, China's response revealed a reality Europe had never fully understood. Most people have never heard of Nexperia. Unlike Nvidia, Intel, or AMD, it isn't a household name. So why is there so much chaos around it? Here's why. Nexperia is a semiconductor company based in Nijmegen, Netherlands, with operations across the UK, Germany, and Asia. It was originally part of Philips until it was spun off in 2017 and later bought by Wingtech Technology, a major Chinese electronics group deeply linked to Beijing's industrial plans. Nexperia doesn't make high-end chips used for AI or data centers. It produces something more basic, but arguably more important. It manufactures discrete semiconductors and power management chips. These tiny, often ignored components control current, regulate power, and keep electronic systems stable. Every car, every appliance, every smartphone needs them. Without Nexperia's components, modern life slows down, or stops. That's why the Dutch government's move was so explosive. Forcing a Chinese divestment disrupted a company that sits at the heart of nearly every major supply chain on the planet. If you listen to American or European politicians, you'd think the entire chip war is about AI processors, quantum chips, and cutting-edge nanometers. Every speech praises new chip fabs being built in Arizona, Germany, or Japan. But here's what no one in Washington or Brussels wants to say out loud. The chips that actually keep the world running are not the advanced ones. They are the simple, low-end semiconductors in every electronic device, and China controls most of them. These aren't the chips powering artificial intelligence or supercomputers. This is the mistake Western governments keep making. They chase prestige, trying to block China from acquiring advanced chip designs. But they ignore the components that keep the global economy functioning. And China quietly dominates this segment. China now controls roughly 43% of global integrated circuit production. And according to data from TrendForce and IC Insights, it makes more than 60% of all discrete semiconductors and over 70% of passive components, capacitors, resistors, Inductors. In simple terms, the majority of electronic parts in your home, your phone, even medical equipment come from factories in Guangdong, Shenzhen, and Jiangsu. Even when chips carry Western brand names like Nexperia, ST Microelectronics, or Infineon, much of the manufacturing still takes place in Chinese or Taiwanese facilities. This creates a dangerous dependency. That's why companies like Bosch are warning that the entire European auto sector could collapse if Chinese suppliers halt shipments. If Beijing paused deliveries for just 1 month, factories in Germany, the UK, and the US would shut down. This is not hypothetical. In 2021, when a fire stopped production at a small Renesas plant in Japan for a few weeks, global car output dropped by more than 10%. Now imagine an entire nation like China closing supply lines. That's the level of power Beijing now holds. Meanwhile, Washington keeps talking about winning the AI race. But the US is pouring billions into advanced chip plants that won't operate for years while ignoring the basic components needed right now. It's like preparing for a space launch when you don't even have the bolts to hold the rocket together. Europe isn't doing much better. The European Chips Act focuses heavily on advanced lithography and 3-nanometer chips, none of which solve the shortages crippling European factories today. China, on the other hand, saw this coming. It invested heavily in low and mid-tier chip manufacturing, quietly taking control of the components the world relies on every day. It didn't need to match the US in AI processors. It only needed to dominate the essentials. The West made the same mistake with rare earth elements. They ignored them until China controlled more than 80% of the world's refining. And when Beijing hinted at cutting supply in 2010, global markets panicked instantly. Now it's happening again, but this time the stakes are far higher. Every sector, automotive, electronics, medicine, energy, defense, depends on these low-value chips. Without them, even power grids and ambulances stop working. The uncomfortable truth is this: China controls the industrial oxygen of the modern world. The US can talk about AI dominance all it wants. But if China shuts off the flow of basic semiconductors, it's the West that suffocates first. And Beijing doesn't need to fire a shot, it only needs to stop shipping. When Donald Trump met Xi Jinping in what the media painted as a turning point in US-China trade relations, Washington believed it had achieved a diplomatic breakthrough. After months of tensions and export restrictions, Trump announced that China agreed to ease some of its semiconductor restrictions and allow limited shipments to US-linked companies. It sounded positive, but in reality, China didn't lose anything. It simply chose when and how to reopen the tap. Reports from Global Times and Caixin revealed that Beijing quietly approved a handful of companies to resume exports of mid-tier chips and essential components to American and European manufacturers. These included power management chips, automotive semiconductors, and certain microcontrollers, all previously restricted. But there were conditions. Any company receiving these parts had to prove its supply chain wasn't connected to US sanctions or military applications. China was still in control. The US side framed this as a win, but it highlighted who truly held leverage. Washington is desperate to ease shortages in industrial semiconductors, especially after months of slowdowns in Detroit and across Europe. Trump's goal wasn't diplomacy, it was economic survival. The US simply can't produce enough of these basic chips on its own. Without China, factories would stall again within weeks. What makes this moment so significant is that China didn't need any formal agreement. It used the meeting to appear cooperative while keeping full strategic control. Analysts note that Beijing sees this as a chance to look flexible while still maintaining dominance. In simple terms, China is allowing just enough supply to keep the US dependent. This sends a powerful message. China can control the rhythm of global trade, tightening or relaxing supply whenever it chooses. While Trump claimed mutual progress, the truth is China is orchestrating the terms. Yes, some chips are flowing again. but only because Beijing allows it. The balance of power has shifted, and Washington knows it. Ignore what the headlines say. The real panic is inside Europe's factories. If China keeps restricting these chip shipments, thousands of workers have no future. That's why Europe's automakers are sounding alarms. Companies like Nissan, Volkswagen, and BMW are warning about delays, production cuts, and possible plant shutdowns. All because they can't get Nexperia components. These are not luxury parts. They're cheap, essential chips that keep production lines running. Without them, everything stops. That's what makes this moment so dangerous. Supply disruptions from China aren't just inconvenient. They hit the industrial heart of economies that have no backup suppliers. The Netherlands can nationalize Nexperia, but it can't replace China's factories overnight. Germany is now caught in the crossfire. Berlin is lobbying Beijing directly for help restoring supply. Think about that. Germany, a close U.S. ally, is negotiating with China, not Washington, to keep its auto sector alive. That's how leverage shifts. When Europe's biggest economy starts appealing directly to Beijing, it means U.S. pressure is no longer the only force shaping policy. China's counter-strategy is brutally effective. It doesn't need tariffs or sanctions. It only needs to delay shipments, slow approvals, or quietly hold products at the port. Every hour costs Western companies millions, and desperation pushes them to Beijing for relief. This creates a dangerous dependency. Publicly, Europe speaks tough about national security. Behind closed doors, it quietly negotiates with China to keep factories operating. So what do you think? Can Europe still escape China's grip, or has the dependency already gone too far? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.